Good evening, welcome to the December 3rd Clifton Park Town Board meeting. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Pat, if you call the roll.
Councilman Whalen here. Councilman Standon here. Councilman Romano is absent this evening. Councilman Wallowit here. Supervisor Barrett.
Here, entertain a motion to approve Town Board meeting minutes of November 13th and 19th. Moved by Ms. Wallowit, second by Mr. Whalen. Discussion. Okay, Pat.
Councilman Whalen.
Yes.
Councilman Standon.
Yes.
Councilman Wallowit. Yes. Supervisor Barrett.
Yes.
Did I miss somebody?
Well, Mr. Romano's not here, so you didn't miss anybody.
Okay.
We miss him, of course, but you didn't miss him in the roll. But he is missed, in case he's watching.
I'm sure he is.
I do have, well, why you wouldn't miss it. Communications and announcements, have a few that I would like to send out here. The first is at the Groom's Tavern this Sunday at 1 o'clock. We will be hosting a holiday open house. The Friends of the Historic Groom's Tavern will be there and working to greet all of you as you enter the Groom's Tavern. It's 1 to 4 on Sunday, and it's decorated beautifully inside and out. If you haven't been to the Groom's Tavern before, it's the place of the first town board meeting, and it's turned into a wonderful cultural center for the town of Clifton Park over the last couple of decades. So if you can join us Sunday from 1 to 4, please do. Secondly, if you'd like to give blood, and the Red Cross can always use it, you'll have your opportunity here in Clifton Park at Town Hall on December 12th from noon to 6. And to schedule an appointment, you can call our town clerk, Pat O'Donnell, at 371-6681. So if you can give blood on the 12th, Red Cross would love to have it. We have an upcoming presentation by the Clifton Park Community Chorus. If anybody that has seen the chorus in the past, I mean, they just put on a wonderful show. The Christmas show is just fantastic. It's over at the Shen Methodist Church on 146. The way the church is decorated inside with the choir on behind the altar, just a wonderful, warm musical presentation that I know you'll enjoy. So that is taking place on Sunday, December 16th at 3 o'clock, and again, that's at the Shen Methodist Church on 146, and that is the Clifton Park Community Chorus, anchored by our town clerk, Pat O'Donnell. So you can see Pat twice between now and the 16th. One, you can give blood, and another, you can just hear some great music. So both happy occasions, right, Pat? Any other communications or announcements? Okay. Very good. As we enter the last month of the year, hard to believe already. Wow. But we're here. Christmas is upon us. But we have a busy evening tonight. I also want to, I don't want to forget this, letters to Santa. Now, I know there's some of you that still have not sent your list to Santa, and you can do that every year with the town of Clifton Park. We're more than happy to be the conduit between you and Santa, and those nice long lists of items that you'd like to receive on the 25th. But you can do that right here. In all seriousness, if you have any youngsters that would like to send a letter to Santa, we'll do that for you. They'll get a response. You can do that through our Parks Department here at Town Hall. All right, first up tonight is to recognize Patricia Lawrence. Hey, Pat. Pat's with us here this evening. We had passed a resolution in Pat's honor following a distinguished honor that she received recently in the city of Albany. So, Pat, if you could read that resolution, please.
This was resolution number 213 of 2018, a resolution recognizing the lifetime achievements and contributions of the 17th Annual Senior Lifetime Achievement Award honoree from Clifton Park, Patricia Lawrence. This was introduced by Supervisor Barrett, and it was seconded by the entire town board. Whereas Patricia Lawrence, born in Dannemore, New York in 1928, has been a longtime resident of Clifton Park who settled in the area with her late husband Howard, raising their 3 sons. And whereas since 1959, Mrs. Lawrence has served the community by playing piano and organ and organizing choirs at facilities such as St. Mary's Church in Crescent, St. Edward Confessor Church, the Shenendehowa Central School District, and Schuyler Ridge Skilled Nursing Center. And whereas Patricia Lawrence has also served on the PTA, been a church school teacher, and has personally provided care for at least 14 aged relatives and friends. And whereas Mrs. Lawrence was awarded the Volunteer of the Year Award in 1996 for her work at Schuyler Ridge, where she has continued to play the piano during weekly church services and for memorial services for the past 28 years. And whereas Mrs. Lawrence is an inspiration to all who know and meet her with her deep faith and willingness to volunteer her time and talents to help those in need. And whereas Mrs. Lawrence is also being recognized as a 2018 Senior Lifetime Award recipient by the Capital District Senior Issues Forum that each year recognizes 40 honorees who represent the very best of their generation and demonstrate that a growing number of older adults are living active and fruitful lives at an advanced age. And whereas the town board wishes to recognize Patricia Lawrence as one who has given of her time as a devoted and active volunteer through her lifetime. Now therefore be it resolved that Patricia Lawrence is gratefully recognized by the Clifton Park Town Board on behalf of all the citizens of the town for her service to her community. And this was adopted on September 10th, 2018.
Fantastic. Thank you, Pat, very much. And like I said, Pat Lawrence is here this evening. Ma'am, would you please come to the podium?
Yes.
And as the resolution stated, Mrs. Lawrence was a recipient of the actual title is Capital District Senior Issues Forum. It's a Senior Lifetime Award recipient. And she was one of a number of seniors across the Capital Region that were recognized at a ceremony. And I was very honored to be there to see you receive the award. Tell us a little bit about the award. I know it's important to you that you let people know that this designation and distinction is available. You do need to present an application to the organization, but it is something that you can nominate somebody for. Is that correct?
That's right. Usually it's done in secret by the people that are nominating the ones. This year they only honored 26 out of the 4 counties of Schenectady, Saratoga, Rensselaer, and Albany counties. I was the only one from Clifton Park, so I think you should all know the qualifications so that you may have someone in your family that would be able to get it next year. I'd love to see someone else, lots of people from Clifton Park get it. One of the qualifications is you must be over 85. And as I'm 90, that qualified very nicely. Also, you must have spent a lot of your time in service to others, to your community and to others. And as I'm still at Schuyler Ridge, that qualified me too. As a matter of fact, my nominees were the staff at Schuyler Ridge. Yes, they do. They fill out an application and they call your family to find out all the dirt they can about you. And and the proclamations are like this long, but they do. They check into everybody. If anybody had a sketchy background, they wouldn't be accepted. But the thing that surprised me, our politicians were all there. Phil probably saw them. Jim Tedisco came in, Mary Beth Walsh came in. They all give you, like I brought the proclamations if anybody would like to see them. They give you citations or proclamations. And there's one big plaque that they give from the Senior Citizens Forum that's framed in wood, too big to carry. But it was wonderful that the politicians cared about people that have spent their lifetime giving to others. And you all do it. We start way back when our kids are in school. I never considered it, especially heroic because you just work where your kids are, you know. I started back in 1958 with my first son going to school, and of course I was homeroom mother, and I always played the piano everywhere I went, and so all the way right up through, you do it with them for the churches, for the, I had a group of senior citizens that just disbanded last year after 20 years. We came in, sang every month at Schuyler Ridge. I'm there every week still. So that's the kind of thing. If you have someone in your family, you call the Capital District Senior Citizens Forum, get the application form, and then it was in October this year. It'll be October next year probably.
Yep.
And you can keep it all secret from your loved one. Mine did. I didn't know until my son called up and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm coming home." And I was delighted. He flew in from Ohio so he could be there for the award, which I thought was nice.
Yeah.
Phil came down. I was honored. All my nominees were there, all the ones that nominated me, and I was just thrilled. They also put out a book. The 26 that were honored, you have a page in the book, and they put your picture and all about you in this book. And everybody that's there gets a copy or a couple copies if they want them. So think about it. For somebody in your family, remember, they have to be over 85. And they have to have served. It can't be a paid job. It has to be volunteer. But a lot of people are paid and volunteering too. So that would count. And I would think we should have some more from Clifton Park. The Albany crowd was very, very nice crowd down there, wasn't it, Phil?
Oh yeah, they're always very nice.
And it was, the place was packed, but I'd like more from Clifton Park. So thank you, and I'm honored to be here with you tonight.
Well, you do a very good job, for Clifton Park, Pat. Representing us, and as you can see, Pat is incredibly humble, and she just wanted to talk about how you can nominate your
That's
loved
right.
one for the award instead of talking about herself and the award. So, again, it shows how humble you are, Pat. And now you've only been volunteering in town since 1959, though.
Oh, I know. Just a short time.
I mean, that's okay. and you volunteered in many, many different places.
Yes, Shenandoah High School.
Where your kids
Yeah.
were not. So,
Yeah.
that's an important distinction
Yeah.
I would like to make as well.
Way, way back when we had the Committee of 50, some of you may remember that when Shenandoah first started. You guys are too young. But when it first started, I was the treasurer of the school, the first treasurer of the school ever had, and sent out the scholarship checks, the PTA scholarship checks. And believe you me, we had a lot of fun with those because we sent them to the college where the student was going, and sometimes they would get lost or the college would misplace them, and the parents would call up and say, "Where's the scholarship money you promised me?" So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you very much. And I'm
Oh, it was my pleasure to be there. You kidding me? But on behalf of Grateful Town, Pat, thank you so much for all of your volunteer work and everything you've done for the town. As I said, she's volunteered in many organizations that her kids were not involved with. So again, trying to be humble. But it's people like Pat that built this town. And if you want to learn about the history of the town, certainly we have many ways you can do that. We have books and pictures and historic buildings and a very active historic preservation commission. But if you really want to learn about the history of the town, take a few minutes to talk to people like Pat. And you'll really learn about the history of the town. What the town was like before the Northway was built. And as she just relayed about the beginnings of the Shenandoah School District. And from somebody that was there at the time on the ground working toward those common goals, that the town had. So God bless you, Pat.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
that
very
is
much.
a very, very long
Thank you.
record of volunteerism. God
Well,
bless you.
I moved into the town in 1951, so I had been here, and I didn't have any kids at that point, you know, so when the school was being started, we all wanted it. Everybody that was moving into this nice country that we had, it was all rural, you know. Everybody that was moving in wanted to have this beautiful central school, and it took 8 of the little schools to make the one big central school. And I remember when they said, someday we may have 1,000 students. Now we are 10,000, you know.
But interestingly, we have less students at Shen now than we had in 1976.
Yeah.
So 40 years ago, we had more students at Shen than we do today, which is pretty amazing to think of.
They thought we would hit 10,000 a long time ago, and we
Yeah.
haven't hit it yet.
Yeah, no. But
I know it.
thanks again, Pat. Round of applause for Pat, please. Okay, good.
No. That's so lovely.
90 and going strong.
Yes. Hopefully for a long time.
I have every confidence that'll be the case. All right, thanks again, Pat, and we're going to move on. We have some public hearings tonight. The first is on the reestablishment of the Ballston Lake Sewer District. We're working with the town of Ballston on a very large project that will bring public sewer to people in Clifton Park and Ballston. A large majority of the properties are in the town of Ballston. A small percentage are in the town of Clifton Park. The town of Ballston has taken the lead on this project. The district was established some time ago, and at our last meeting when we set the public hearing, Bill Goslin was here from the town of Ballston. He discussed and gave us a brief update where things stand. Kim, did you have anything that, or Ed? Sure. Kim is here from the town of Ballston, and Ed Hernandez, who's on the engineering side. You can lift that up a little bit, but yeah, if you can maybe
Thank you, Mr.
maybe
Supervisor.
give us a brief update as you did at the last meeting.
Sure. So my name is Kim Kukuski. I'm serving as the project manager. As Mr. Barrett said, it's a joint project with Clifton Park and Ballston. There are about 100 parcels in Clifton Park. The project will place a sewer around Ballston Lake, which is impaired for phosphorus, so it's an environmental need. There are 2 public hearings tonight, and the first one is about reestablishing the district, because the vote that occurred for this project was back in 2015. And since that time, the project received a $2.5 million grant from the Environmental Facilities Corporation due to the environmental need. And there's additional project information that's changed since 2015. We do feel that costs for construction, we anticipate that they will be higher. We do not know exactly what they will land at because we have not gone out for bid yet. We predict that we'll do that within the next week or so. So this is a project update to do parcel IDs, costs, and inclusion of the grant. Does that cover everything, Tom? So that is the first public hearing, and then we'll do an introduction for the second when we get there.
Yeah, and again, the reason why we needed this public hearing?
Just to reestablish the district with that new information.
Right, because the numbers changed, but the grant will offset any increase in the
Yes.
cost. Is that the
So
projection?
the overall maximum amount that we do not expect to exceed will be $12.7 million. Back in 2015, we predicted it would be 10.2, but because of the grant, the anticipated cost to the parcel owners would be, if anything, lower. We don't anticipate it to go higher. That grant would offset the construction costs. Sorry, it's up here, but not...
Sure. Oh, yeah. No, not at all. Now, one thing that Kim mentioned that's important is as Ballston Lake has been identified as an impaired body by DEC, and the issue there is the phosphorus, as you described.
Yes, the
Go ahead.
Phosphorus is the issue, and DEC has contributed the phosphorus to 3 different causes, but one of which would be failing septics, so the sewer would take care of that around the lake.
Very good. Okay, thank you. And there was a vote on this by the people affected, right?
Yes.
Yes. So the people that will receive the public benefit voted in the affirmative to move forward with the project. When the referendum was held, the actual percentage, I know I had that here, 13.26%, give or take. 13.26% of the overall project is in Clifton Park. The remainder is in the town of Ballston. All right, great. Well, thank you for that update. Ed, anything that you wanted to add as far as
No, I think.
any information that would be helpful?
Yeah, I think you did. Kim described it well.
Okay. Yeah, and in this this whole project, has been moving forward for years, and now we're at this point of reestablishing based on the new information as Kim described. So with that, we'll open up the public hearing if you'd like to comment.
To read the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Pat. Please read the public hearing. I jumped ahead there.
Please take notice that the Town Board of the Town of Clifton Park will conduct a public hearing on Monday, December 3rd, 2018, at 7 p.m. in the Wood Memorial Meeting Room in the Town Hall, located at 1 Town Hall Plaza, Town of Clifton Park, County of Saratoga, State of New York, regarding the establishment of the Ballston Lake Sewer District Number 1 in accordance with Resolution Number 247 of 2018, adopted by the Town Board on November 5th, 2018. The Town Board of the Town of Clifton Park has been working with the Town of Ballston, which has prepared engineering maps, plans, reports, and cost estimates for the provision of municipal sanitary sewers for properties around Ballston Lake. The construction of the sewer improvements is proposed as a joint project. The financing of the system is proposed through the establishment of sewer districts in each town, with approximately 13.26% of the estimated usage equivalent dwelling units within Clifton Park. The Town Board of the Town of Clifton Park has scheduled a public hearing to solicit comments from the public concerning the proposal. The boundaries of the proposed Ballston Lake Sewer District area generally encompasses properties along the eastern and southern border of Ballston Lake in the Town of Clifton Park, with borders generally described as beginning at the southern end of the boundary line between Clifton Park and the Town of Ballston, near the intersection of Shawver Road and Ballston Lake Road, including 4 parcels with frontage on Ballston Lake Road and/or Mill Road. The SBLs are 257-1-24, SBL 257-1-3, 257-1-30, and 257-1-6.1. Said properties will be connected into the sewer collection system that serves the Town of Ballston Sewer District on the west side of Ballston Lake, and are more particularly described in Exhibit A. And the estimated maximum amount to be expended for the improvements, including design, construction, and administrative costs, is $1,900,000 for the improvements to be constructed within the Ballston Lake Sewer District Number 1 in Clifton Park. And the proposed method of financing the cost of the improvements consists of the issuance of serial bonds and bond anticipation notes of the Town of Ballston to mature in annual installments payable in the first instance from assessments levied on benefited real property in the proposed sewer district, with the Clifton Park District paying its proportionate share of the debt service to Ballston annually. And the cost of acquiring, constructing, and installing the improvements will be assessed by the Town Board in proportion as nearly as may be to benefit which each lot or parcel in the district will derive therefrom. And the cost of the proposed extension to the typical property in the extension is estimated to be $910 per year, which consists of the debt service payments estimated not to exceed $700, and operation and maintenance charges through the Saratoga County Sewer District at published rates. The estimated cost of the hookup fees to the typical property as part of the extension is $500, which consists of an inspection fee payable to the Saratoga County Sewer District, which will accept the flow generated from the sewer facilities. The estimated cost of connecting each property to the system is estimated at $8,000 to $10,000 on average, and includes the cost of residential grinder pumps necessary for compatibility with pressure sewer facilities, and the connection of lateral sewer service pipes installed from each property line into the home or structure. Now therefore, please take notice that the Town Board will hold a public hearing to hear all persons interested in the establishment of the Ballston Lake Sewer District Number 1 and the proposed sewer system improvements, which public hearing shall be held in the Wood Memorial Room 1 Town Hall Plaza in the town of Clifton Park on December 3rd, 2018 at 7 o'clock p.m. And this was in the Daily Gazette on November 12th.
Very good, thank you, Pat. With that, we'll open the public hearing. If you'd like to speak on this matter, please raise your hand. We'll ask that you come forward, state your name and address for the record, and please keep it to 5 minutes or less. Is there anybody that would like to speak on this matter? Okay. Going once, going twice. Oh, hi, Nancy. How are you? Come on up.
I'm Nancy Bellamy. I live at 147 Eastside Drive, Ballston Lake. I'm 74 years old, so I'll be 103 when I make my last payment of $961.
At that point, you'll be eligible for the Capital Senior District Award here from Pat.
And I was born here in 1944, so I was here before she was here. We used to put copper sulfate in the lake to treat the algae bloom, but I don't think we do that anymore because it's hard to buy copper sulfate. My son was wondering if anybody had been down Eastside Drive lately to see the rocks that they're taking out of the new foundations, because they're like this, and they've broken a couple blades on the steam shovel that they're trying to scoop out the cellar, and it's quite amazing what they're taking out, and it might be interesting for anybody who's going to bid on the project to see what kind of soil conditions we have. People want to know when you think it might start. They want to know if the grinder pumps last, 10 years? Because when I was on the town board, there were a lot of people coming in that the grinder pumps in Country Knolls were all wearing out at the same time, and everybody was having sewage in there.
Well, if they're installed at the same time, I would think they'd probably wear about
like
the
it's
same
about
time.
10 years each, would you say?
What's the useful life of a new grinder pump nowadays at?
Well, the grinder pump station itself will last 30 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
The pump itself, which is a component of it, can typically, after about 10 to 15 years, needs to be rebuilt.
So 10 to 15 years,
Okay.
it would need to be rebuilt and replaced.
Well, it seems like a lot of people on our street have more than one lot, so we've always been concerned about how much it's going to cost. I have a
Right.
house in Herkimer County, and I pay $16 every 6 months for my sewer. And I was just wondering, when it comes to the end of the 30 years, do you know how much we have to keep paying? Like if I give my house to my grandson, do you know how much he'll have to pay? I don't know.
The public rate for the county.
Whatever they, okay. And then if you put in a septic tank, now, I've never seen any toilet paper floating by, but if there is
Well, that's
somebody's septic tank that is a major problem, should they get it fixed now before they wait for the sewer to come by? Or are we just going to let, if there's a excrement going into the lake, let it keep coming? Do you know if anybody has a septic tank that's going into the lake?
I don't have any personal knowledge.
Because I
of
can't
any
imagine
individual
anybody
homeowner
sitting there
or
with their
septic
kids going
tank.
swimming if there's all this floating by. You know? Okay, thank you. We just had a lot of questions, but
Yeah.
it seems like we're all set. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, very good. Anything else that you wanted to say? Ed or Kim?
To answer a couple other questions, we did a pretty intense geotech survey.
Can you come up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it might make it a little easier for everybody to hear. I think the plan was that the bids would go out in December. Is that still correct, Kim?
Yes.
Okay. Ed?
Yes, as part of the project, we did a pretty intensive geotechnical survey where we actually went down the street and drilled holes so we could identify the expectation on how deep the rock is. And there's quite a bit of rock
Yeah.
throughout areas of the project, and the bidders are being notified about that. So,
Mhm.
so that should be addressed.
And that was expected, sir.
That was expected. Septic tanks, I know the Department of Health and some of the towns have allowed people in the short term, knowing that sewers are coming very soon, if their system fails, Now, when we know we're gonna have sewers in the next year or two, then they sometimes make arrangements to do a pump and haul type of situation, rather than spend the money on a new septic system.
For those of us that aren't up to date on all the latest lingo in the sewer biz, pump and haul?
So you would have a company come out,
Yeah.
if anyone that knows, has a septic tank, knows they have to get their septic tank pumped out.
Mhm.
Basically, you have to get it pumped out on a very frequent basis, to prevent any failure of your drain field if you're having a problem. And that could be monthly, it depends on your particular situation.
So that's you having it emptied and taken away.
Correct.
Good. The other important item with any of these special districts that we've accomplished here in the town, either water or sewer, the good thing is for a homeowner who knows that their septic situation is in crisis or it's getting to its useful life's end, they can they don't have to replace it if they know that sewer utilities are coming, because it costs, and every septic project is a different cost, obviously. But what would you say would be the average for a normal septic replacement? 10 to 15?
In that area where you have a lot of rock, it's close to the surface, and you have to build an above-ground system, there's people around the lake that are currently spending as much as $35,000. It's pretty shocking.
35,000? Oh, okay. Well, normally it's about 10 to 15. However, in circumstances where there is a lot of rock, as we discussed in this area, up to 35,000. Wow. So obviously that is a very large one-time expense, and septic systems don't last forever. Plus you have the ongoing maintenance and the hauling, the pumping and the hauling, and everything else that goes along with it. So, so septic systems can be very expensive. Now, if you're part of a special district, you are assessed each year your share of the cost of installing the infrastructure that will provide public utilities to your property. That is true. You're not required in Clifton Park to hook into that pipe immediately. You do have some time to decide when is the right time for you to hook into the pipe that's just been installed in front of your home, okay? But you would be responsible for your share of the debt service annually until that bond payment is paid off. Now, with these special districts, the local municipality borrows the money for the special district, okay? So that helps spread out the cost over a series of years. Each project is different, but it's usually, most projects are in the 20 to 25 year area, 30 years at times. Depending on the project, the bond payments will go out for at least 20 years, sometimes more. All right, and again, that's just to spread the cost for the people that want the public service installed near their home. Okay. Any other comments from the town board on this at all? No? Okay. All right, with that, we'll close the public hearing. And so December, you think, will be the time when the bids go out? Okay. Now, as far as the timing on when construction might start, spring? Spring construction season?
Yeah, we're hoping to start in the spring. It's up to 2 years for the construction period. It's quite a while.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So the estimated time to start will be the spring construction season, and as Ed just mentioned, it would take up to 2 years. So it's a big project, no doubt about it, and challenging due to the soils. All right, very good. We have another public hearing. Pat, if you could read that legal notice as it appeared in the Gazette.
Please take notice that the Town Board of the Town of Clifton Park, New York will hold a public hearing pursuant to Article 2 and Section 201 of the New York Eminent Domain Law on Monday, December 3rd, 2018 at 7:05 p.m. in the Clifton Park Town Hall, 1 Town Hall Plaza, Clifton Park, New York. The purpose of the public hearing will be to inform the public, to review the public use to be served, to consider the need and location of the proposed property acquisitions in the town of Clifton Park, and to assess the impact of the acquisitions on the environment and the residents in the vicinity of the Ballston Lake Sewer District construction project. The town board wishes to describe, solicit, and consider public comment on the proposal to acquire easements in Clifton Park along and near the sewer collection and conveyance system and related facilities to be constructed. The town of Ballston is proposing to construct a sewer collection and conveyance system of approximately 50,000 linear feet of force main along Ballston Lake, 14,000 linear feet of gravity sewer in Buell Heights and along Main Street, a pump station and associated appurtenances in order to convey wastewater along the west side of the lake northward to a point of connection with the existing Saratoga County Sewer District sewer collection and conveyance system. The conveyance system will include construction of approximately 1 mile of sewer main from the intersection of Lake Road and Stonebridge Drive to direct wastewater to the Saratoga County Sewer District existing wastewater collection system and sewer interceptor in the vicinity of Chinataha Park, and ultimately to the Saratoga County Sewer District's existing wastewater treatment facility. The Ballston Lake Sewer District boundaries are generally described as involving parcels around Ballston Lake on the east side, from East Side Drive and Shawver Road to Lake Road, extending to East Line Road, and on the west side of the lake, including West Side Drive from Mill Road and Main Street, Glenridge Road, White's Beach Road, Powers Lane, and Outlet Road, to a connection point on Lake Road, and parcels on private streets along Ballston Lake, as well as the Buell Heights neighborhood in the Main Street area of Ballston Lake, including Mill Road. The 4 remaining property acquisitions within the town of Clifton Park need for the project will involve condemnation of easements over portions of the parcel specifically identified as 258.5-1-11, that's Clifton Park, Shelley Hurst, 140 East Side Drive, Ballston Lake, 258.5-1-30, Clifton Park, John David Wood, 112 East Side Drive, Ballston Lake, 258.9-1-29, Clifton Park, Randall Young, 30 East Side Drive, rear, Ballston Lake, 258.9-1-74, Clifton Park, Thomas Giorgio Jr., 66 East Side Drive, Ballston Lake. Copies of the proposed acquisition, maps, plans, and report are available for public inspection at the Clifton Park Clerk's Office, Town Hall, 1 Town Hall Plaza, Clifton Park, New York, during regular business hours. All persons having an interest in the proposed property acquisitions or the project are invited to attend the public hearing and may give oral or written statements and submit other documents concerning the proposed project. These property owners, who may subsequently wish to challenge the condemnation of their property interest via judicial review, may do so only on the basis of issues, facts, and objections raised at this public hearing. And this was by order of the Clifton Park Town Board. And this was in the Daily Gazette from November 12th through the 16th for 5 days.
Okay, thank you, Pat. James Traynor is here. He is representing Clifton Park and the town of Ballston in these matters. Now, there's 4 easements that we have been unable to obtain at this point, right, Jim?
Yes, within the boundaries of Clifton Park. There's another 9 that remain in the town of Ballston.
And in this case, it's just a matter of acquiring the easement to install the infrastructure needed to bring the public sewer to the homeowners in this area per the district that has been established and that we had discussed in the previous public hearing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. As far as the homeowners themselves, there would be minimal intrusion onto their property.
Yes.
We're only interested in constructing the pipe and infrastructure necessary for the public sewer, and it would be restored to its original condition.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's another important point to make. Okay. Well, I just wanted to make those points up front, and I'll hand it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. First of all, I wanted to thank the town board for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm Jim Trainer, as Mr. Barrett said, special counsel to the town for eminent domain purposes.
Don't say special counsel. Can you say like of counsel or something? Because you might be here for you might be here 2, 3, 4 years, you know. I don't want you to have to take that long. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Our team this evening, Ed Hernandez is our project engineer. He's here this evening. Kim Kokoski, our project engineer, is here. Our project administrator, and Wes DeVoe from the Ballston Lake Sewer Committee is here. And our stenographer this evening, Laurel Stevenson. She'll be taking down every word that we all say, so the good, the bad, and the ugly. So
I want to read that before you leave. If this was anything I want to take up. Pat doesn't write down everything we say.
The eminent domain public hearing is a legal requirement in order for the town to go forward and acquire the easements necessary for the project. Our agenda this evening will cover the things that are itemized there, and I'll have to apologize in advance for reading most of this. I want to get it into the record so Laurel can take it down. Our agenda
that the board had some tools in their tool chest to provide some discretion as to whether a particular application made sense and was harmonious with the surrounding area. So I think if you look at it closely, those options are available to the planning board. And with that, that's about it.
Thank you. You're right. The project itself and your consideration of various iterations of a project for that parcel in the Exit 8 area has been going on for about, what, John, 3 years?
Yes.
How long of that has been on this project, though? It's only been a limited time for this particular.
We started
Option,
with
right,
apartments, and then that went nowhere. And then we went with condominiums, and that went nowhere. This particular application seemed, and certainly I can't speak for the planning board, but it seems that it has resonated a little bit, where we proceeded from a positive concept review and have proceeded to submit a very detailed subdivision application, which was recently submitted, and we are actually being heard by the planning board next week, December 11th. So obviously we just want to make sure that if there is any action on something like this, that a pending project like ours would be exempted.
Well, you're right. You did submit, the first option was, I believe, 90 apartments,
Somewhere
which
around there.
that requires town board approval. The town did not approve that. Then you went to, was it just less apartments, or was it?
I think it was condominiums, actually. It was, the density dramatically decreased, but the town board did not entertain that. And this particular application, which we put a lot of time in trying to minimize impacts and also not having a cut-through road, which from our many meetings with the residents was not something they were interested in having. We managed to avoid that. So,
Oh, I think you still can, yeah.
yeah, there was a lot of effort in that.
Yeah. But there were, how many submissions required town board approval or at least a decision? Was it 3?
I believe it was 2 prior to the 2017 application that's currently pending
Okay.
with the planning board.
Okay. All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, John, as far as the gray area that's been mentioned that appears to be in the code, which is one of the main reasons we would consider this change, talk a little bit about that. how the current language creates a gray area.
Sure. The current language, even when we look at the Western Clifton Park GEIS, speaks to impacts and build-out scenarios based on single-family homes, but then fails to address, or is silent to at least, the impacts of duplexes and what potentially, two families versus one family have to those build-out calculations relative to the CR zone. So that was an area that when somebody says, well, what's the GEIS say? GEIS is silent, so we can't get into the head of what the intent was with that. Because of the lack of infrastructure in Western Clifton Park for the most part with water and sewer, there are some limitations on the land area, just by the nature of being able to accommodate a well, potentially a septic, and then the required separation distances to have such private infrastructure on a site. But I don't think it was contemplated to the level back in '03 to '05 over that 2-year process that we're at today, with the potential desire for duplexes, especially as the baby boomers have continued to age and seniors are actually outpacing the younger generation in population right now. So there is that downsizing effect that we are seeing that, as recent as 2003, it wasn't an issue. The other thing is relative to lot sizes. One of the things that we look at and property owners often come in, especially in the R1 zone, is what can be built next to me and what's a reasonable expectation. And you have existing developments, and then you have single-family homes adjacent to vacant open space that is subject to development, and everybody sees single-family homes around them. So often if they don't come in, they make an assumption, well, that's going to be a single-family home. We have heard from the public more times than not that I wish I knew that a duplex could go in on that same lot, and a special use permit is, again, a permitted use, but the planning board, through its review process, has the ability to attach reasonable restrictions. If the restrictions that need to be what the courts deem reasonable can't be accommodated, then and only then would a planning board really have a basis for a denial. So, some of the feedback we've heard from just the general public is if the impacts were no greater than what a single family home would be, I wouldn't have an issue with it. So that's where, at least in the R1 zone especially, where some of these recommendations came out of. The public hearing that's mandated as part of the special use permit, we've heard a common theme from residents that are here for various applications, but it seems to be a common theme that have been brought up with special use permits.
Yeah, we do have a very diversified housing stock. I mean, we certainly have our share of apartments, mainly older, small number of newer apartments. We do have duplexes in various neighborhoods, including including a new project that'll be coming online. So I know we have a very diverse housing offering for people of all price points and needs. So that's something that I think is a strong point for the town. All right, very good. Anyone else? Yes, sir. How you doing tonight?
Good, how you doing?
Good.
Hi, my name's Ralph Reel, 13 Hiawatha Drive. I moved to Clifton Park 22 years ago, and prior to me purchasing my property, I looked in the area. I was looking for a single-family residential area. So my property met that qualification. I then looked at the area behind me, where this proposed development is off John McKenna Way, and that was zoned R1. So I felt that it would be single-family houses. So I'm here to urge the town board to adopt this before any chance that these duplexes do go in. And I came from I was a multi-family property owner, and I lived in one of them for a while too, and I kind of wanted to get away from that when I moved to Clifton Park. So I would also like to note that the town comprehensive plan said that the existing house with single-family detached units is the predominant type and should continue. So, you know, that's what I was moved to Clifton Park for, to be in a single-family residential neighborhood, and I'd like it to continue that way.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Bill?
Bill Kebyman, 861 Riverview Road. Pauline and I live in the GEIS for Western Clifton Park, so I'd like to give you the perspective of a current resident that I'm very happy with what you've done with the GEIS in Western Clifton Park. I think it's a shining example for all of Saratoga County as what can be done to balance development with the quality of life for current residents and the protection of the natural resources in that area. So I'm just here to urge you to stay the course with this GEIS and your regulations. I think they've held up very well. I think there is a little ambiguity about the duplexes. I definitely would like to see you, if you have duplexes at all, they're each one dwelling unit with all of the requirements that a single family would have. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am? How you doing today?
Hi, Kathleen Kennett, 15 Hiawatha Drive.
May I have your last name again?
Kennett.
Kenneth, thank you.
So I also am on the same street as a couple of the others that spoke already, and it affects me directly in the R1 zone, having the land behind me developed, but potentially could affect anyone living in the R1 zone or any of the proposed zones for the duplex. So the cluster subdivision that is being proposed allows for basically double the density of the R1 zone. So instead of 20,000 square feet per lot, you're now at 10,000 square feet. And then you're putting a duplex on half the size of the lot. So you're having two families live on half the size, and really what it means is each side of the duplex is getting 5,000 square feet. So we went from a 20,000 square foot lot for one family to a 5,000 square foot lot for one family. So in my view as an R1 resident property owner, is that's quadruple the amount of density that I would anticipate being in my backyard or my neighborhood or any R1 or any of the other proposed. So I urge all of you to consider that it's not just doubling but potentially quadrupling. And down the road, if duplexes are allowed, there's always that potential, that future that they may be divided down the middle and sold individually. So you will have 4 times the amount of density than what I think anyone who purchased in the R1 zone would expect. So I just urge you to really consider that and think about the impacts, not just to safety, traffic, but our property values and the quality of life as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Judy Morley, 8 Wheeler Drive.
Hi, Judy.
Hi. I have been listening closely, and I just have a question that I formulated, and I hope it makes sense to you. I'd like to know, how would the proposed amendment to the code restrict the granting of variances and the changing of zoning codes as we've seen in the past? Or would it?
Well, it would be a slight change in the code itself. As far as variances, what kind of variances? You mean like a zoning variance, use variance or something of that nature, or the special?
Not even the special use, but the change in the variances. Well, the code says you need this much land to do A, B, C, but we can somehow get variances, and we struggle with this in our own neighborhood, and that vacant lot that's at the corner of Woodland Hills, not the Scott Oral side, the other side. No building has begun on it, and originally we were told it was to be a single-family house with an in-law apartment. And that has been changed, supposedly, and as I'm sitting here tonight, I'm beginning to wonder if the purpose of the delay, or one of the purposes could be, if this amendment goes through, that this person could then build a duplex or perhaps 2 duplexes. So it's a particular need I have as a specific example, but I'm just wondering in general, would the change in this code then, the amendment to the code, prevent the other problems that we've experienced already?
The change would affect the amount of area that is required for a duplex. And under New York state law, there's a statutory ability of anyone to come in and ask for an area variance. You cannot have a zoning code in New York state unless you have a zoning board in New York state. And you can't have a zoning code and a zoning board in New York state without the statutory authority to consider area variances under statutory criteria. So this board can affect the base density, but it can't eliminate the New York state jurisdiction of the zoning boards to consider area variances.
So the answer is no.
So the answer is someone can apply for an area variance.
No, the answer to my question is no, it doesn't affect that.
Yeah, I don't think,
still
John,
business as usual.
in terms of that specific property,
I think that had a business classification to it, zoning. I don't think it was zoned R1, so I don't think it's affected by these changes, but these changes inherently double the density, so they're actually more restrictive than what the current legislation could be interpreted to read. So I wouldn't say that's somehow going to create greater impacts in an area. Again, it wasn't written for any single or specific project. It's looking at 4 zones townwide.
What's the status of that property that Judy is identifying now?
It was a few years ago. I can't remember if it was subdivision or
No,
special
but there's
use permit,
anything
but
recent or?
There's been nothing recent.
Oh.
It's the interesting part, okay. This was the daycare.
Did you hear of something else recently, or?
The last we heard was that the delay was because what the person had originally proposed to do, he had changed his mind and now was seeking to build 2 single-family homes in the area that had been supposedly would accommodate a 1 family with an apartment.
Oh, so you didn't hear this from a planning board meeting or anything? You just
No.
word on the street.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a concern because
Yeah.
very often, as you know, people are unwilling to come forward, but these things are all occurring, and then you're surprised with them.
And this is the parcel that faces 146?
Yes.
Correct, yes.
This was the whole daycare thing, whatever.
Yeah, that's...
I know, it's history.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
good news,
yeah,
but it just raised a level of concern, and thank you for answering.
Thank you, thank you. So there's nothing submitted currently for that parcel?
No, there isn't. I believe that was at least 2 years ago.
Okay.
Planning board.
Judy, how close do you live to that parcel? So she would be notified under most circumstances, right? Oh, okay, okay. You live closer? Okay. Judy's your spokesman? Oh, come on. You don't want to come up and talk to us? Oh, no, you're not. Look at Pat. Pat barely touched the floor when she walked up there. Are you kidding me?
Lucy Nolan, 13 Island Drive. What I would like to know, does the town have an answer to the people who, particularly in our neighborhood, they're single-family homes, so we're talking about density and et cetera, and we have people who are renting rooms. what's the law pertaining to that?
I can't answer unless you come up here. No, I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding.
I'm going to write
Strike that from the record. Gosh, how long ago was that? Probably 10, 12 years ago, I think it was. There was some concern about that, so we did limit the number of non-family people that could live in one home. Was that the correct?
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
And was it 3 or 4?
3 or 4, I have it here, actually.
Oh, well, how about that? Yeah, I can look it up and send it to you. I just...
I'm looking for the law, and wherever it is, I mean, we know...
I mean, if somebody's renting a room to somebody, you know, in their home, or somebody's living with somebody, I mean, obviously that's a private transaction. We wouldn't have any
Should
knowledge.
they not be paying taxes on the rent they are receiving from these people?
Well, that's between them, the IRS, and their God. So that's, and not necessarily in that order. But that would be a personal tax question.
Okay, but if you...
We wouldn't have any additional taxes on that.
Right, okay. But I mean, you're talking about density, so, you know, usually when somebody buys a house, they have 5, 6, 7 people, and you're basically related because they're your kids or your grandmother or whatever, but now you've got somebody renting a room with having 2, 3, and 4 people coming in. I thought there was a law against, you know, unrelated people.
Well, we do, and we changed that to make it more strict. I think it was 10, 12 years ago.
6, 7 years.
Oh, was it?
So who enforces it?
The building department.
The building department.
Can you tell us where the any code is? 'Cause
Yeah, sure, we can get it to you. Yeah, sure.
we
Yeah.
have more than one agreement towns.
Okay.
And it also.
Yeah, we can get you a copy. If you want to give me your address after, we can send it to you. If you want to pick it up, it's up to you either way. I can email it to you. So, I'll see you after the meeting. Okay?
Thank you for allowing me to sit here.
All right. You only get one of those a year. Lucky for you, it's December.
My birthday next week, so
Oh, really? What day?
14.
Oh, my son's the 10th, my younger son. Pretty close. All right, very good. I'll see you at the wing place. I don't want to give him a free plug. Anyone else? Yes, Nancy. We're still on the public hearing, too.
Yes. I just wanted to ask a question. In the town of Ballston, there's a development on Round Lake Road going towards exit 11. And it was a big farmer's field, and they were able to buy the development rights from a farmer on Good Street. And so they have duplexes, I believe that's what you call them. It's like 2 houses together. They're right on the edge of the road, and they're so close you can pass sugar to each other. Is that what, if you are going to build a duplex, but then you can buy your development rights from a farmer, then you can make your density tighter?
Maybe. I'm not familiar with the Ballston Code. I mean, we have...
Do we sell development rights
Yep.
in this town?
Yeah, and we've done those transactions with Riverview Orchards. Where else? I can't remember where else, but yeah, we do have that. We've had it for some time.
That's terrible.
I'm not sure what the Boston Code says. So. Anyone else on the subject? I want to keep us on subject here. So if that's it, we'll move. Oh, Frank. Urban Meyer's here tonight.
Got it, brother.
Bittersweet weekend. Big Ten champs shot out of the Final Four. Bittersweet weekend. Yeah.
Watch out for Washington, brother. We're going to hammer 'em. I just had a comment about, you know, we make statements about duplexes are for maybe downsizing, but I would think that could may be true, but there also is, I know a lot of people, my kids' friends, that live in duplexes because they can't buy the other house. So it's not just some house that's being built for the benefit of the poor old people, right? It's for, and us, it's built for the, you know, everybody kind of uses them. And people want to come here because it's a great town. I mean, that's the whole thing that's going on. If you can live in a duplex or a smaller place and not take care of everything, you know, you got tennis courts and swimming pools and trails and, you know, great things going on here. So that's
Open space.
one of the deals. You got it, right? So, you know, that's why people want to come here. And, what did you say, no town tax? Do you say that once in a while?
That's correct.
All right, thanks. Just,
I'll give you a list for the next meeting, Frank, so you can just read the list off. I'd appreciate it. But, no, my first two homes that I lived in 30 years ago or so were townhouses, yeah. So, yeah, it's all ages. Anyone else? Okay, very good. Any last comments from the board? Question?
I have a couple of...
Ms. Walloway.
John.
John.
A clarification on the single-family home with an in-law apartment. In some of our older developments, as I've been out and about, door, I have seen them. Did that have to have a special permit? And has that rule changed, or is it going to change? If you have a single-family home in some of the newer developments and you want to put in an apartment, and then how is it defined by the town? Is it a two-family home?
Yes, good question. Our code currently does not make a distinction between in-law apartments or family member accessory dwellings and two-family. So we've treated all in-law apartments as two-family dwellings as conditions of the special use permit. Often the planning board has had applicants agree to the fact that, and what's typically the trigger for two dwelling units is a second kitchen facility. Sometimes it's a second ingress and egress separate from the main living facility with the kitchen facility. It's not necessarily an addition with a bedroom for a shared kitchen facility, so kitchens tend to be the trigger. We have had conditions put on the special use permits that it's to be used for family members only pursuant to our town code definition, and if no longer used for family members, then it shall be incorporated back into the main structure, either with the elimination of a ingress or egress, or an entranceway to the main structure, or the elimination of a secondary kitchen facility. What we see sometimes is in those situations where somebody may need the additional care from family members, but they're still independent and want to have the ability to cook their own meals. So that's been the trigger for a lot of times for these special use permits. Without any special definition for in-law apartments, it would be, as Tom was saying, whenever you have a zoning code, you have to have relief offered to any section of that code to at least be considered by a zoning board of appeals. Without a provision for in-law apartments and making a distinction, the process would require the additional density for those units and still treat them as two-family dwellings, but they would be treated under an area variance requirement and, potentially as conditions of the area variance and an SUP if they're treated. It would just, allow for those similar conditions to be applied.
Okay? Okay, very good. Anyone else on the board? Yes, Mr. Well.
Just a comment that I have, and John, feel free to correct me, as you often do, politely. It seems to be that with the special use permit applications that have come before the planning board, there's been, I don't want to speak for the planning board, there's been a perception on the planning board's part that there's a lack of clarity regarding density and a concern, and I appreciate the concern, to follow the rigor of the law, to follow the precise wording, and not engage in denying projects that would subject the town to Article 70 proceedings, liability, and spending money on cases that litigates and ultimately loses. So I appreciate their constraints within that. At the same time, a complaint that I've heard is that the code is currently written is allowing developers to, in essence, double the density. That there's enough vagueness on the part of the code that, and I understand the development pressures that are out there, and I don't begrudge anybody from following the law and doing what the law permits them, but allowing them to build essentially two houses on a lot where the intent of the code was to permit a single-family residence. So I think this clarifies what I think the intent of the code initially was, and helps clarify that point for the planning board. Just get to the zoning point, as someone who was a member of the zoning board, I mean, there are criteria, statutory criteria that an applicant has to meet. So even though certainly they can make an application, but there are, I'd say, relatively rigorous criteria that an applicant would have to meet and satisfy the zoning board.
That's for a zoning variance.
For zoning variance, correct. One other point regarding the request to exempt applications pending before the planning board. I can appreciate the request, but I don't see how that's honestly fair to the town as a whole, to residents or other applicants with other projects. It would seem to me to be an exception very clearly designed for one project or one builder, and I definitely have a tremendous amount of reluctance to agree to that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right. With that, we'll...
I don't know if it would be possible just to say one more thing.
Sure.
And this is a question for John. Is there...
Oh.
I'm sorry.
I really need you to come up here.
Just for my own... is there a zoning code by itself that allows duplexes by its own? Or does it have to be part of a PDD? I'm curious about that because...
There are zones within the town center that allow duplexes as of right, and I believe within our business district also, that allow duplexes.
So B3? That,
I'd have to double check. I've got the code here
Yeah.
on the phone, but...
I think it might be B3. Don't know.
Okay, no, I was just very curious about that at Abley Builders because I know the special use permit, I think, fills in a gap where there may not be underlying a multitude of ways to do a duplex unit, and they're very popular. For what it's worth, it seems in marketplace they're very well sought after. So I think it should be considered as part of a healthy mix. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, is that it? Anyone else? All right, with that, we'll close the public hearing. And we do have a number of resolutions for consideration. Pat, if you could read through those, and we'll consider each one individually.
Resolution scheduling the 2019 organizational meeting and the first 2019 town board meeting in Town Park. Whereas the town board wishes to schedule the 2019 organizational meeting and the first 2019 town board meeting, and they will be resolved that the 2019 organizational meeting of the Town Park to be held on Wednesday, January 2nd, 2019 at 7 p.m. in the Wood Memorial Meeting Room, 1 Town Hall Plaza, Clifton Park. And be further resolved that the first town board meeting of 2019 will be held on Wednesday, January 2nd, 2019, immediately following the organizational meeting in the Wood Memorial Room, 1 Town Hall Plaza, Clifton Park, New York. A resolution authorizing budget transfers for calendar year 2018 as specified in Exhibit A, whereas the Comptroller has recommended that certain budget adjustments contained in Exhibit A be made to address the needs of all funds as well as other miscellaneous expenditures as set forth in Exhibit A. Now therefore be resolved that the budget transfers specified in Exhibit A be adopted per the Comptroller's recommendations. A resolution authorizing the renewal of a memorandum of agreement with Shenandoah Nordic Ski Club. Whereas the town owns Kinston Road Park and Garnsey Park as park properties, which are popular with hikers, runners, and cross-country skiers, Nordic skiers, during winter seasons. And whereas the town acquired Garnsey Park in 2005-2007 and dedicated the land as public parkland by resolution number 249 of 2007, and whereas the Shenandoah Nordic Club has acquired specialized equipment, including a snowmobile, sled, groomer, and trailer to transport equipment for the purpose of grooming cross-country ski trails without conflict with other uses, and whereas the club utilized their equipment and manpower during the 2017-2018 winter season to expand trail grooming to Garnsey Park as well as Kins Road Park to provide additional opportunities for cross-country skiers and ski teams, snowshoers, and walkers alike pursuant to an agreement approved by Resolution number 18 of 2018. And whereas the town board supports the Shenandoah Nordic Club's volunteer efforts and activities which provide additional opportunities for outdoor recreation at Garnsey Park and Kins Road Park, and wishes to renew the agreement with the club for a 3-year term. Now therefore be resolved, the supervisor is authorized to execute the attached memorandum of agreement with the Shenandoah Nordic Club for trail grooming services for ski seasons through March 2021. A resolution authorizing change order number 1 and 2 to the contract for replacement of the door at the Clifton Park Senior Community Center. Whereas by resolution number 165 of 2018, the town board awarded contract number 2, door replacement, to replace an entry door at the Clifton Park Senior Community Center to Bishop Beaudry Construction LLC in amount not to exceed $39,650. And whereas Bishop Beaudry Construction has submitted a no-cost time extension in change order number 1 to extend the date of completion to September 28, 2018. And whereas JME KB Engineering BC has deemed the project substantially complete in a letter addressed on November 19, 2018. Now, it be resolved that the town board authorizes change order number 1 and a no-cost extension for the installation of a replacement door at the Senior Community Center, and be further resolved that the town board authorizes change order number 2 to release unused allowance amounts, and be further resolved that the controller is authorized to pay invoice number 2 for the remaining balance of $1,920 to $1,920 to be paid from, and that line is listed. A resolution authorizing the hiring of a laborer for the Clifton Hills Park District and Buildings and Grounds Department. Whereas a position was created and funds allocated for the retention of a laborer with the Buildings and Grounds Department to provide maintenance services for both the Clifton Hills Park District and for services throughout the town. And whereas the supervisor and Park District concur on the recommendation of Nicholas Arp, Clifton Park Center Road, to fill the position, now therefore be resolved that Nicholas Arp be hired as a laborer full-time effective January 2nd, 2019, within the Buildings and Grounds Department, with emphasis on Clifton Hills Park District property and facilities during spring, summer, and fall seasons. And be further resolved that Mr. Art be compensated at $37,688 at a grade 3, step 1 annually, with 75% paid from I believe that would probably be the Clifton Hills Park District line, and 25% from a town line. A resolution awarding the contract for mold remediation at Town Hall to Service Master of Upstate New York. Whereas Daniel Clemens, Superintendent of Buildings and Grounds, received quotes for remediation of mold found in the building department of Town Hall. And whereas the lowest conforming quote for the work to be done, which includes mold remediation at the site, was submitted by Service Master of Upstate New York in an amount not to exceed $11,547.57. Now therefore be resolved that the town board awards the contract to Service Master of Upstate New York for mold remediation at Town Hall at a cost not to exceed $11,547.57 to be paid with a transfer from undesignated funds to, and that line is listed. A resolution regarding, a resolution awarding the bid for mechanical equipment for the pools. Whereas on November 6, 2018, bids were received for the above referenced contract. And whereas the supervisor has recommended that the bid for pool equipment for the 3 town pools be awarded to Pool Supply World in an amount not to exceed $11,231.64. Now therefore be resolved that the town of Clifton Park hereby accepts and awards the above referenced bid to Pool Supply World for $11,231.64 to be paid as follows: $6,681.98 from for Barney Road pool equipment, $3,996 from Locust Lane pool equipment, and $553.66 from the Country Knolls pool equipment, in accordance with the equipment used at each pool. A resolution authorizing the supervisor to submit grant applications to the Capital District Transportation Committee for the 2019-2024 funding grants under the Transportation Improvements Program. Whereas the New York State Department of Transportation administers the TIP program of federally funded, locally administered transportation projects pursuant to federal statute. And whereas town board supplies, the town board policy supports transportation improvements, including those for the expansion of non-motorized transportation alternatives, as well as projects for enhanced driver safety and modernization whenever feasible. And whereas eligibility criteria for the TIP program includes a commitment of 20% matching funds from local sponsors for each project awarded funding under the program. And the planning department has identified, just think of whereas, 5 strong potential projects which meet eligibility criteria under the TIP program. And whereas the town board wishes to express its support for the following projects within the town. 1, town center walkability, including concrete sidewalks and Clifton Country Road pedestrian improvements. 2, Route 146 and 146A bicyclist and pedestrian improvements. 3, Grooms Road multi-use trails and crossings, South Barney Road to Moe Road Trail. 4, Hubs Road multi-use trails and crossings, which will connect existing sidewalks and wide shoulder at Long Hill Road to Dutch Meadows Drive. 5, transportation safety and driver safety improvements at Miller Road, Tanner Road, and New York State 146 intersection to Vista Drive to include bike pedestrian connectivity with proposed roundabout. Now therefore be resolved that the supervisor is authorized to submit the 2019-2024 TIP applications for each of these proposed projects, and be further resolved that the town board expresses support for committing the 20% local matching funds necessary to accept funding for any and or each of the projects for which funding applications are submitted. A resolution approving an outside user connection to the Clifton Country Road Sewer District Number 1 for property located 15 Clifton Country Road. Whereas the town board as commissioners of the Clifton Country Road Sewer District Number 1 has received a request to extend service to land owned by VP Outlot South LLC at 15 Clifton Country Road, more particularly identified as SBL 272.1-44.3. And whereas CP Outlook South LLC intends to request the inclusion into an expanded sewer district after subdivision of 15 Clifton Country Road is completed and separate tax identification numbers have been assigned. And whereas the real property is located outside the current service area of the Clifton Country Road Sewer District Number 1, and whereas Michael O'Brien, Collection Systems Manager, has determined that sufficient capacity exists within the Clifton Country Road Sewer District Number 1 sanitary sewer system to provide service to the property, and whereas the town board recognizes the environmental planning and policy objectives met by approving sanitary sewer service over alternative plans for the new septic systems, now therefore be it resolved that the town board as commissioners of the Clifton Country Road Sewer District Number 1 hereby approves an outside user connection to the district's facilities for property located at 15 Clifton Country Road, Clifton Park, and be further resolved that the connection fee of $1,000 per lateral and the permit fee of $50 per lateral applies to Town Code Section 169-103, and be further resolved that the outside user agreement shall be assigned to the commercial establishments constructed at 15 Clifton Country Road and connected to the Clifton Country Road Sewer District Number 1 facilities. A resolution is reestablishing the Ballston Lake Sewer District Number 1, increasing the maximum amount to be expended within the town, and authorizing the acquisition and construction of improvements to the sewer district subject to permissive referendum pursuant to Article 12A of the New York State Town Law. Whereas the town board of the town of Clifton Park proposes to establish the Ballston Lake Sewer District Number 1 in the town of Clifton Park, New York, pursuant to Article 12A of the town law, and whereas the town of Ballston has adopted a map plan report by Delaware Engineering dated July 9, 2015, which provides the engineering and cost information relative to the establishment of the sewer district within the town of Ballston near the town line of Clifton Park, and generally within the vicinity of Ballston Lake, and has established a sewer district subject to referendum. And whereas a map plan and report relating to the establishment of the proposed district within the town of Clifton Park near the town line with the town of Ballston, and also generally within the vicinity of Ballston Lake, has been prepared by John M. McDonald and McDonald Engineering, a competent engineer licensed by the state of New York in the manner and detail required by the town board, has been filed with the town clerk in accordance with the requirements of Article 12A of the town law. And whereas the boundaries of the proposed Ballston Lake Sewer District area generally encompass properties along the eastern and southern border of Ballston Lake in the town of Clifton Park, with borders generally described as beginning at the southern end at the boundary line between Clifton Park and the town of Ballston, near the intersection of Shawver Road and Ballston Lake Road, including 4 parcels with frontage on Ballston Lake Road and or Miller Road, and those properties are listed, more particularly described in Exhibit A attached, and the properties will be connected to the sewer collection system that serves the town of Ballston Sewer District on the west side of Ballston Lake. And whereas the proposed sewer district also generally includes all properties with frontage on East Side Drive, including adjacent properties with private access roads and lanes connecting to East Side Drive, said properties will be served by a pressure sewer system that will discharge northerly to a connecting pressure service that will serve properties along the east side of Ballston Lake in the town of Ballston. And whereas based on the engineering maps, plans, reports then prepared the town board established the Ballston Lake Sewer District by Resolution 227 of 2015, estimating a maximum amount to be expended within the Clifton Park at $1,450,000 and estimating the annual cost of the improvements to the typical property at $910. And whereas on August 11, 2016, the project was awarded a grant of $2,559,563 from the New York State Clean Water Fund administered by the State Environmental Facilities Corporation, which is to be spread proportionately across both towns and will be used to offset a portion of the capital cost of the project. And whereas the Town of Ballston's map plan report was supplemented and updated by an engineer's estimate dated September 17, 2018, and whereas the map plan report prepared for the town by McDonald Engineering was supplemented and updated by correspondence from Prime AE Engineers as successors to McDonald Engineering dated November 1, 2018, and whereas according to the updated engineer's report, the maximum amount which is now estimated to be expended within Clifton Park is $1,900,000, with the estimated annual cost to the typical property owner unchanged at $910 after allocation of state grant funds in Clifton Park. And whereas the town board of the town of Ballston has declared itself lead agency and has caused an environmental assessment form to be prepared and has issued a negative declaration under secret, and whereas the environmental assessment form is on file in the town clerk's office and is available for review during normal business hours, and whereas resolution number 247 of 2018 called for a public hearing to be held on December 3rd, 2018 at 7 p.m. to hear all persons interested in this matter and to take action as required by law. And whereas the resolution was published and posted as required by law, and whereas a public hearing on the matter was held by the town board on December 3rd, 2018, beginning at 7 p.m., and the matter was fully discussed and all interested persons were heard. Now therefore, the town board of the town of Clifton Park hereby determines that 1. The notice of hearing was published and posted as required by law and is otherwise sufficient. 2. As all the property and property owners within the proposed district are benefited thereby. 3. All the property and property owners' benefit are included within the limits of the proposed district. 4. The establishment of this district is in the public interest. It is further determined and resolved that the map plan and report prepared by McDonald Engineering dated August 17, 2015, as amended and supplemented by Prime Engineers on November 1, 2018, be adopted. And it is further resolved that the town board hereby approves the reestablishment of the Ballston Lake Sewer District Number 1 as the boundaries shall be finally be determined and authorizes an increase in the maximum amount to be expended from $1,450,000 to $1,900,000 and approves of the construction of the sewer system improvements and facilities as set forth in the map plan report, which improvements including construction, acquisition of pipes, pumps and material, acquisition of lands and easements, legal and engineering fees shall be publicly bid as a joint project with the town of Ballston, with the Ballston Lake Sewer District Number 1 improvements to be financed by the issuance of serial bonds and bond anticipation notes of the town of Ballston, with the town of Clifton Park providing debt service payments to Ballston in proportion to the property benefited within each town as a percentage of the joint project area and according to the projected number of users and usage, such debt service charges to be assessed, levied, and collected in the same manner as all other charges against the district and consistent with the engineering map plan report as adopted. And it is further resolved that this resolution is subject to permissive referendum pursuant to Article 12A of the New York State Town Law. And it is further resolved that the town clerk, within 10 days from the date of this resolution, shall post and publish a notice which shall set forth the date of the adoption of this resolution and shall set forth concisely the purpose and effect thereof, and shall specify that this resolution was adopted subject to permissive referendum.
Okay, another mouthful. Any questions on the resolution?
Oh, wait, let me find it. Where am I here?
The organization.
Yeah. First time, first one.
Okay.
Resolution number 275 of 2018, a resolution scheduling the 2019 organizational meeting and the first 2019 town board meeting for the town of Clifton Park.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mr. Whalen. Discussion.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Walowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 276 of 2018. A resolution authorizing budget transfers for calendar year 2018 as specified in Exhibit A.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Walowitz, second by Mr. Whalen. Discussion.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Walowitz? Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 277 of 2018, a resolution authorizing the renewal of a memorandum of agreement with Mendenhall and Nordic Ski Club.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mr. Whalen. This is another wonderful use of one of our newer parks, Garnsey Park, 150 plus acres. Some of that fronts 146, and we accepted ownership of a large parcel from Saratoga Plan that'll add another 90 acres to Garnsey Park. So we'll be right up around the 250 acre mark now with Garnsey Park, which is fantastic. More to come on that. We'll have more information on that acceptance of ownership of two parcels from Saratoga Plan. But in this case, this is a resolution authorizing the renewal of our memorandum of agreement, and happy to do so. Any discussion?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Walowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 278 of 2018, a resolution authorizing change order 1 and 2 to the contract for replacement of the door at the Clifton Park Senior Community Center.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Ms. Walowitz, second by Mrs. Standard. So our list of improvements to the Clifton Park Senior Community Center are complete. We have a new floor in the community room, which has been very, very popular. New HVAC equipment that was brought in via crane, and the first effects of that will be felt more so in the summertime. And the doors, as you enter the building, brand new. So a lot of great things going on at the center, a lot of improvements, and I do want to thank Senator Tedisco for a grant that covered the cost of most of what I just mentioned. We also installed a new concrete patio off the front of the building. So we have some more ideas. So we're going to continue to make improvements. Our membership has grown from 620 when the town assumed operational responsibility for the center in December of 16. 2 years later, now we're almost at 1,200. I think we're at 1,180 the other day. So just about doubled since the town has been managing the facilities. So we're very, very pleased, and it's great to see the center becoming once again a cultural center for the town of Clifton Park. Okay, Pat?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Walowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 279 of 2018, a resolution authorizing the hiring of a laborer for the Clifton Hills Park District and Buildings and Grounds Department.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mr. Whalen. Mr. Clemens?
Yeah,
Why should we consider hiring Mr. Art? He's always been with us for a number of months, right?
yes, sir, that's correct. Nick came to us as what we call summer help, seasonal help, and he's sitting right over here. And he impressed me right away with how hard he worked and his work ethic, and he came on time every day, and whatever he told me, he went right after. And Clifton Knolls Park District was also extremely pleased with all the stuff that got done over there for them around the ponds. He got a lot of things done, and that's really why we need to hire him.
Yeah, let's not shower too much praise. No, he did distinguish himself this summer, and you know, it's when we do hire people seasonally, we're able to see them in action. You know, when they're hired seasonally, there's it's what it is, seasonal. It's for a specific period of time. In this case, Nick does bring a set of skills and work ethic that was very helpful to us during the summer. We have an opening in the buildings and grounds department, and it would seem natural that he would step in and assume that position. So keep up the good work, Nick, and welcome aboard. If they vote yes.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Marlowitz?
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Resolution 280 of 2018, a resolution awarding the contract for mold remediation at Town Hall to Service Master of Upstate New York. And please note that this was for the building department and not buildings and grounds department.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Walowit and second by Mr. Whalen. Yeah, there's a small area where some mold was identified. We had it, we hired a company to come in and assess it. I think it's best at this point to just take care of it. Mold can spread if it's left to its own devices, so best we take care of it now and get rid of it. Anything new in the last couple of days that I missed on that, or?
No, sir, you got it exactly right.
All right, good. Okay, very good. Pat?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Marlowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 281 of 2018, a resolution awarding the bid for mechanical equipment for the pools.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mr. Whalen. And this was part of our end of the year debrief with the pool employees, and we're going to be purchasing 2 motors. One to replace a motor at Locust Lane, and then we're going to have 1 motor on standby in case we have an emergency. It's always good to have a motor on hand just in case. So that is the expense. Any discussion? Okay.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Marlowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 282 of 2018, a resolution authorizing the supervisor to submit grant applications to the Capital District Transportation Committee for the 2019 through 2020 for funding grants under the Transportation Improvements Program.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Whalen, second by Ms. Swallowit, and we continue to be very aggressive with our grant submissions, and hopefully continue to be successful in getting them awarded. We have 2 large grants that are in play going into next year that are new. We're currently managing about $5.5 million in various grants, and we hope to add to that number. We have 5 submissions here, and I think at the next meeting, John, I didn't want to do it tonight because I knew we had a lot on the agenda, but perhaps next meeting we can go through these submissions in more detail.
Yep.
Sound good? Very good. Yes?
Sorry, I just have one question for John. On the resolution, it talks about the 2019 to 2024 funding grants. Can you, I'm just confused as to, is there a window, like, that's not it for 5 years, is it?
Yeah,
Or is it?
what actually happens is it's the Transportation Improvement Program, which is administered by our local MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is the Capital District Transportation Commission, and they have a 5-year plan for the federal funds that are administered through our MPO. It's updated every 3 years. So this is our 3-year update to the 5-year plan that's programming for 2019 to 2024. And this would be the one shot in the next 3 years at least to get projects onto that 5-year plan.
Okay, that was my question. So if we didn't submit now, we'd have to wait.
At least 3 years to the next 5-year plan update.
Okay. 3 years for a 5-year plan.
Exactly.
Welcome to New York. Be positive. Be positive. Positive karma here. Yeah, so we're still waiting to hear from a few other grant submissions in this last round of a different type of program that we submitted this summer.
That's correct. One of these projects here, the first one, pedestrian connections for concrete sidewalks, on Clifton Country Road was actually submitted in August as part of the TAP program, the Transportation Alternative Program, which is for non-vehicle related improvements. The governor said that we would hear by this fall on the status of that application. Fall is not done until December 21st, so we don't know the status of that, but it was also eligible for TIP inclusion, so we basically repackaged it to apply under both TIP and TAP in anticipation of getting one of the two funded.
It just seems like winter,
Yes.
right? Well, tip, tap, whatever it takes. All right, very good. That?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Marlowitz? Yes. Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Resolution number 283 of 2018, a resolution approving an outside user connection to the Clifton Country Road Sewer District Number 1 for property located at 15 Clifton Country Road. So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mr. Whalen. Mike?
This is just a procedural thing to,
Hit the mic, please.
Hit the mic, Mike.
hit the mic. This is the second of the two buildings that were built on the front of Village Plaza in the past year and a half. Through Windsor Developments, even though they're under North Side Partnership, I think. This building's ready to go online, and it just lies outside the district of how we drew the original district boundaries, and with the new subdivisions, they have to do an outside user agreement to legally discharge into the sewers. Someday, if we do a full district extension, they'll automatically just roll into it per this agreement, and that's it. So they paid their hookup fees, they're ready to go, they're waiting on this from the sewer department anyway.
Yeah, okay, good. Very good. Thank you, Michael. Any discussion, questions for Mike? Okay.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Marlowitz? So Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Resolution number 284 of 2018, a resolution reestablishing the Ballston Lake Sewer District Number 1, increasing the maximum amount to be expended within the town, and authorizing the acquisition and construction of improvements to the sewer district subject to permissive referendum pursuant to Article 12A of New York State Town Law. So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mr. Whalen. Discussion. I think we're all discussed out. Tip, tap, or otherwise.
Okay, all right. Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Marlowitz?
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
Yes. Okay, any other business to come before the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll go to public privilege. If you'd like to speak on the town matter, please raise your hand. We'll ask that you come forward, state your name and address for the record, and please keep it less. Any takers this evening? Yes, Nancy. Microphone turned on, didn't it?
You can tell I don't have anybody to talk to at home.
Oh, well, you can always come here and talk to us, Nance.
First off, I wanted to say that after the last snowstorm, I don't know exactly what happened, but if you come up Schauber Road and go to take a right on the, like we have a Y at the end of East Side Drive, there's a great big pothole there now.
Oh.
And it's right where you have to go so that if anybody else is coming out at the stop sign, you have to hit the pothole. So I thought maybe Dan...
Mr. Ball and the crew will be down there tomorrow.
Okay. Election inspectors are calling me to see when they're going to get paid, and I thought that it was after the December County Board of Supervisors you approved the vouchers. Is that tomorrow?
No, our county board meeting wouldn't be until, I'm not sure, I can't remember what day it is this month, but it's later in the month.
Okay, so they should not be waiting by the mailbox.
I really don't know exactly when that'll happen.
But when we used to talk about...
I mean, that's all budgeted, so I don't know why we would need to approve it.
Well, they can't get paid, the treasurer doesn't pay them until they're approved by the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
We were just talking a few minutes ago about if they did bring water, because they kept saying at the Lake Association, we'll never bring water if you don't have sewers.
All right.
So now that if we have sewers, do they bring water in the same line, or do they dig another trench? Do you know what they would do?
That would need to be engineered.
I know, but do they engineer it now?
They're not going to use the same line, I can guarantee you that.
Well, I'm just saying, you say there's very little room.
Oh, there is, yeah, the right-of-way is pretty small, yeah.
And I mean, when they showed a picture of France Lane, I mean, that's my brother's driveway.
Oh.
They were going right down the middle of the road, and then two property lines.
Yeah,
and
it's
then-
tight in some areas,
So-
as you know.
I figure either they're going down the middle of the road or they're going to go on one side or the other. But then if they have to dig up the whole thing on the other side of the road, because they just put natural gas on one side of the road, and a lot of us use lake water, so we have pipes coming up from the lake, like up past everybody's house. So the sewer lines are going to have to either go under our water lines or over our.
You want them underneath.
And the other thing, you keep saying Miller Road, and I think it's Mill Road.
I said Miller Road?
In the,
Yeah, because Miller Road is way over here. But
it
there's
also
a,
Yeah, I know where Miller
it also
is.
mentions Glenridge Road.
I know,
And
I'm thinking,
I questioned that, but
yeah,
I don't know.
I just thought maybe we had a couple of.
Oh, you mean in the resolution?
Yes,
No.
here, in the notice of the public
Oh,
hearing.
okay.
Yeah.
It says Mill Road.
It says Mill.
We do have a Mill
West
Road.
Side Drive from Mill Road.
From Mill Road.
Yeah,
That's
maybe I
where-
said Mill,
Oh.
but it does say Glenridge Road.
Well, that's where Paul Lord is, part of his properties in town of Ballston, part of
Or
the
did it say
Yeah, we don't have a Mill Road in Clifton Park,
Yeah,
do we?
it's right there.
Mill.
It's
Mill.
where Astro-
It's right by, it's like around.
It's right where
Oh, Mill.
Astrochemical is,
No.
and Parkus Mills. And somebody just bought Parkus Mills. It's on the historic register.
Oh.
And they just painted it bright red, and I've heard they're making it a brewery. So that'll be interesting, but that's on Ballston side.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, never quite sure where the line is over there, I guess. Anyone else? Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
If I may.
Yes, absolutely.
At the risk of deriving listening sympathy,
Ah.
I've had to leave the house recently before 6 a.m. many days, and I want to thank the highway department, Superintendent Dan Bull. I've seen the highway trucks out there before 6 a.m. getting the roads ready for town residents, and as someone driving in inclement weather last week at 5:45, we appreciate the effort, so I just wanted to acknowledge
Thank you very much.
Superintendent Bull and the highway department, so thank you.
Yep, we've had a little bit of inclement weather. I think it's, well,
Next 2 days look pretty good.
No, I'm not gonna say
I know.
it.
As soon as I said that.
Yeah, I know. But hopefully the December is better than November. Okay, we need a second.
So with that, I will second.
Second, Mr.
Councilman Whalen.
Yes.
Councilman Standard. Yes. Councilman Wallowit. Yes, Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you.
This evening. Next, in terms of Clifton Park's involvement in this project, the parcels in the town are at the southern part of Ballston Lake, and specifically we're going to talk about the environmental impacts in and around Ballston Lake. But in your town code, section 13-1, it indicates that the preservation and enhancement of the environment in the town of Clifton Park is recognized to be of vital importance to the quality of life of present and future residents of Clifton Park. Since population pressure, urbanization, technology changes, and changing cultural attitudes place demands on natural resources, the town board further recognizes that the participation of its citizens is vital for the protection of the environment. So tonight is another opportunity for the citizenry to participate in that process. The goals of the sewer project and of the eminent domain process will provide a public use, that is the Ballston Lake Sewer District and Ballston Lake Sewer District number 1 and the Saratoga County Sewer District will provide a public sewer collection system to replace the private septic systems near Ballston Lake and do so at a reasonable cost to the district users. It will also provide a public benefit, and that is the protection of public health and environmental resources by improving the quality of potable water used by area residents and allow Ballston Lake to experience a gradual recovery from excessive phosphorus infiltration. And finally, it will provide a public purpose, that being to decrease the amount of phosphorus and fecal coliform currently leaching into Ballston Lake from the private sewer septic systems, which is causing the lake to be regulated as an impaired water body under both state and federal law. In terms of the project background, a sewer study was completed 4 years ago in May of 2014. And based on that sewer study, a map plan and report was detailed in July of 2015. That map plan and report was approved by the lead agency in this project, which is the Ballston Town Board. It identified parcels within the district. It assigned EDUs, or equivalent dwelling units, and that's how the costs are distributed. It also identified the annual cost to the homeowners at $907 per year per EDU. The project does span both towns of Ballston and Clifton Park, approximately 700 parcels total, so this is a very big project. 560 of those EDUs in Ballston and 91 here in Clifton Park, or 13.62%.
Susan.
In terms of further background, as the supervisor mentioned, the Ballston Lake Sewer District Number 1 was approved by the town board in September of 2015, but was subject to a referendum for a vote of the citizenry. That public vote occurred in October of 2015, and it was approved by 55 yeses and 27 noes. In terms of the project funding, this was mentioned in connection with the last public hearing in part. The town of Ballston applied for both a grant and a low-interest loan, and ultimately received both in the amounts that are denominated there, $2.55 million in terms of a grant and $7.65 million for a low-interest loan from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, which is part of the Environmental Facilities Corporation. In terms of the project design, I'm going to ask my teammate Ed Hernandez to cover that. Ed?
Yeah. For the record, again, my name is Ed Hernandez. I'm with Adirondack Mountain Engineering. Our firm was hired by the Ballston Lake Sewer District to design the sewer project. The project itself serves several different areas in the town of Ballston and the town of Clifton Park. The Beale Heights area is served, which is this yellow area here, is served by the gravity sewer system that flows downhill to a new pump station on Main Street in the town of Ballston. That pump station pumps through a combination force main low pressure sewer that runs along the west side of the lake, terminates eventually at a manhole that belongs to the Saratoga County Sewer District at Shenandoah Park. The east side of the lake, which includes the portion of areas in the town of Clifton Park on East Side Drive, is a low pressure sewer system. As indicated, it includes grinder pumps at each of the residences. And that pumps along the east side of the lake and discharges to the existing sewer pump station at Stonebridge. All the wastewater is conveyed to the Saratoga County Sewer District Number 1 in Mechanicville. The project was designed to convey the most efficient method for flow while serving the maximum numbers of users. We attempted wherever possible to put the sewer piping in the existing right-of-way, where the right-of-way was too small, or there were other conflicting utilities. There were portions, areas where we were required to go into private easements, and several of those easements are the reason for this public hearing. There was an environmental quality review done as part of the project. The project is being processed in accordance with the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, Title VI, Part 617 of the official compilation of codes, rules, and regulations of New York State. An environmental assessment form, long form, and other environmental impact information evaluated by the lead agency, the town of Ballston, was completed. A determination of no environmental significance and a negative declaration was issued by the lead agency as part of a coordinated review. And then a SECRA update was conducted in September 2018 by our firm to verify that we were still in compliance with that determination. As part of those environmental reviews, we looked at cultural resources. We actually hired archaeologists, a team of PhD archaeologists to go through the project and verify that we weren't
impacting any cultural resources or historical buildings. That report was sent to the Department of State, SHPO, State Historic Preservation Department, and they issued a letter indicating that the project could move forward. A team of environmental scientists went out and identified all the wetlands that were throughout the project. Those wetlands were avoided wherever possible. In some areas where we had to go through the wetlands, appropriate permits were obtained from the DEC as well as the Army Corps of Engineers. There was some potential noise and air impacts identified. They were minimal and they were limited to the construction period, to brief areas as the project moves forward. And then again, the purpose of the project was the protection of Ballston Lake as an impaired water body.
Thank you, Ed. We're going to now get into the actual eminent domain process, and I just wanted to briefly discuss how easements are acquired through the eminent domain process. The first term of art is condemnation, and Councilman Whalen seized on this last time I was here. Condemnation in the statutory sense does not mean that the town is going to board up your home, but rather that's the term that's used in the statute to acquire the slivers of property along the front of the parcels. So that's why it's used. Secondly, property acquisition is limited to the minimum amount needed for the project. Here, again, it's going to be a strip of property, and I'll show you a sample in a moment, at the front of the parcel, wide enough for the construction to take place and for the sewer pipe to live in, if you will, for the duration of its need. Third, the easement, I wanted to distinguish an easement from ownership of a parcel. The town is not looking to take ownership of the property. An easement is a right to use a certain portion of the property for a limited purpose, and I'll detail that in just a moment. But that's a distinction. We're not actually taking ownership of any property. And then the easements themselves break down into two types. First is called a permanent easement or permanent sewer easement. That stays with the property for the duration. It runs with the land, so to speak, and will be in the property records for the parcels. The second type of easement is a temporary construction easement, and as it says, it's there for the duration of the construction, mainly to allow the contractors maneuver room to get their equipment in and do what they need to do. This is a sample of an easement map, and each of the parcel owners have received this along with a legal document called the deed of easement. And as you can see here, approximately 200 easement requests were mailed out, and I have on the slide all but 24 have been signed, 4 of those in Clifton Park. Our team has been very successful in acquiring some more easements. We're down to 13 total. The deed is the legal document, as I said, to allow the use of the private property for that specific purpose. That is, the language used in the deed is to construct, operate, and maintain a sanitary sewer line. In addition, that 10-foot temporary easement will be allocated on each side of the permanent easement as needed for the duration of the construction. Schedule A, which is always attached to the easement, deed of easement itself, is the survey map, and here you can see the location of the main things. The red line is the sewer main itself. Property boundaries here on top and bottom are in white, and the easement boundaries themselves are in green. And those are described in a legal description or a survey description in meets and bounds. So it's very precise, and that's how it will show in the property records once the easement is acquired. The character of the easements and the terminology used in them is grantor, grantee. The grantor is the parcel owner, the person who's giving that right to use to the grantee. And it's the parcel owner is defined by the property records in the Saratoga County Clerk's Office. The grantee is the town of Ballston, the town of Clifton Park, and the Saratoga County Sewer District. Those easements can be acquired, as has been the case up until now, voluntarily, and the committee has been very successful in that regard, or through condemnation, and that's what this proceeding is all about, to commence the legal process to acquire the remaining easements by compulsion, if you will. Once either the property signed the deed or the judge signs what's called a vesting order, then either of those documents is recorded in the property records and stays or runs with the land in perpetuity. And I just wanted to mention, if any of the 4 property owners are here tonight, you're very welcome to come sign your easement. Our engineers have those available, and we do have notaries here to take care of that tonight if you would like. Just some further detail as to what's allowed in the easement and what's not allowed. You can see temporary items, plants, flowers, and the like, shrubs, ground cover, ornamental plantings are the types of things. Some driveways, obviously, pavements, parking areas. The main idea is that it's temporary in the sense that it can be removed if work needs to be done on the sewer line in that location. Those things are allowed so long as they don't cause any interference with the use of the sewer line. They can't go down, in the ground very far so as to damage the pipe. Certain things that are not allowed within the easements are more of a permanent nature. Anything that is permanent construction, brick, stone, or block walls are not allowed. Sheds, large trees, fences, underground lawn sprinklers, underground pet fences. And those are the things that you can't put in there. That will obviously make it difficult to service the line if need be in the future. So the procedure after tonight for eminent domain, the town board will be asked to make its determination of findings. That's the official document that commences the eminent domain proceeding. The town will then publish and mail to those property owners a synopsis of that determination of findings. It's quite lengthy, so the synopsis will probably be down to 2 or 3 pages if I can get it that far. The aggrieved parties, those that are the properties being taken from, the easements are being taken from, have 30 days from the completion of the publication of that determination of findings or the publication of the synopsis in the newspaper to seek judicial review of the determination of findings in the Appellate Division, 3rd Department. It's a specialized procedure. Obviously, if you're going to pursue that, get an attorney to help you. And then from that point on, the town then acquires the needed easements. Again, we're always open to acquiring those voluntarily, but if not, we're going to have appraisers at those properties in the coming months. They will be there to take some pictures, take some measurements, and so forth. Don't be alarmed by that. They will then determine a value for those easements. I will then send you a letter on behalf of the district offering you the appraised valuation, and then you'll have a very limited period of time in which to respond to that. If we don't hear from you, then we'll move forward with the court proceeding to acquire the easements, and once the judge signs the vesting order, the construction will begin. It'll go very quickly as soon as those appraisals are in. For tonight, as far as the public comments, again, I would ask that any of the property owners who are here, please speak up and speak first if you would. And by the way, if anyone hasn't signed in on the sign-up sheet, particularly those for owners, we'd appreciate it if they did that tonight before leaving. Verbal or written statements are permitted. Please give your name and address clearly for the stenographer. 5 minutes max per speaker. And if you have detailed questions about your property, please come up after the public hearing. Mr. Hernandez has the detailed maps here, and he can answer your questions regarding that. For further information after tonight, two main sources is the website for the project, ballstonsewers.org, or by email, sewers@townofballstonnewyork.org. So with that, Mr. Supervisor, I will take any questions from the board, if you'd like, or turn it over to the public.
All right, any questions? Mr. Whalen?
I just have one, Jim.
Sure.
Obviously, there's the longer some of the homeowner does not agree to an easement and a condemnation proceeding has to begin, obviously there's a cost involved to that.
Yes.
Is that cost borne by the property owners themselves, or is that a cost that is borne by the district and then in theory spread out among all the residents within that district?
That's a good question. It becomes a district cost that gets spread over the other users in the district.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay.
Okay. So if there's anybody from the public that would like to speak, please come forward. Anybody? Are any of the owners here tonight? Ms. Hurst, Mr. Young, Mr. Wood. What was the last one?
Were they notified?
And Mr. Giorgio.
Were they notified to be here?
Oh, yeah. Multiple times. Many of them attended the Ballston public hearing as well. This was an additional opportunity for them to comment.
This project has been in motion for years.
Yes.
A referendum approved the district. Have you been given any reasons as to why they have not agreed to allow use of the easements to construct the infrastructure and install the pipe?
Well, the committee has been very successful in getting most of the
Right. No, I mean, as
signatures.
far as the whole, these four folks in particular, right?
I think they all have different concerns. In some cases, it's the location of a tree or a well that causes them concern. Those things have been addressed as far as we can prior to construction. And then their concerns will be passed on to the contractor and probably written into the contract documents so that those things can be addressed in the field. So I think that's part of the concern. The other part may be that some people are thinking this is an opportunity to get compensation. I don't think that it's going to result in much compensation to them, but that's up to the appraiser. That's what legally we're required to offer. But
Yeah, I think if there were acres of property in question or something of that nature, obviously there would be probably a large compensation to be had, but in this case, it's merely a very small easement to install the infrastructure. That will ultimately benefit the homeowners.
yes, and I think that's the important point. Obviously, no guarantees about increase in property value over time, but it's an infrastructure improvement available right there at the edge of the property. And I think most importantly for the community at large, it's a tremendous improvement in the future quality of the lake.
Yeah.
What's happening now is just unsustainable, and this needs to be done in order to preserve that as a viable source of recreation and drinking water in the future.
Well, this project affects many people across two towns. There's the environmental concerns regarding Ballston Lake, so that there's many many elements of public health and in the wishes of the people within the district to consider. And so I hope we hear from these last 4 homeowners. I mean, is it a case, are they out of town, or is there anything of that nature?
They've been notified and
Yeah.
have responded by certified mail and by publication.
Oh, okay, good.
Like I said, I think, I want to say at least a couple of them attended the public hearing in Ballston, so they know what to have expected this evening. I will be in touch with them in the very near future with that synopsis, and then follow up with them once we have the appraisals in. So I'll be in constant contact with them, and we're hoping they'll come in before we have to go to court to sign the easements.
Yeah, I'd rather not take that route, obviously. Now, the Ballston Town Board has reestablished the district, is that correct, Kim?
That's right.
Yes, okay. So Ballston has already completed the process of reestablishing the district, which is the subject of our first public hearing this evening. The other thing to point out for those that may not be familiar with that area, the right-of-way in many spots within the neighborhood, at least on the Clifton Park side, the right-of-way is very small, very tight, right?
Yes. It is, but Mr. Hernandez, in designing where it's going to go, has made quite an effort to keep it within that right-of-way wherever possible.
And as I mentioned, this project has been discussed, studied for a few years now, the whole process. But it's not the first time that public water or sewer has been contemplated for that area of Clifton Park. I remember when I was new to office back in the early 2000s, based on feedback from the residents in that area in Clifton Park, they were very interested in water and sewer being extended to that area. We had numbers, we had engineering reports that were commissioned, and once the cost of the project was disseminated to the residents affected by the possible formation of a special district and meetings we had right here in this room, there just wasn't the support necessary to move forward at that time. So the prospect of public water and sewer being extended to this area has been something that's been discussed many times over the years. I think there was a point way back, wasn't there? I wasn't, this would be well before my time. I think it was in the 80s where there was a large grant that would have been available. Is that right, Ed? Are you familiar with that?
Back in the 70s, when they built the entire Saratoga County Sewer District, these areas were voted to see if they wanted to be in a district that had no cost back then.
Oh, okay.
And they actually got voted down.
Yeah. Wow.
They thought it would bring development.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, in this area, as you know, Nancy, a lot of these homes were not year-round homes. They were basically camps for vacation, weekend stays. Over the years, they have become year-round. They become year-round homes. So that has changed the dynamic in that immediate area as well. Okay. If there's no more questions, we have no. Oh, yes, Mr. Whalen.
Besides adding to the cost to the district, if this process were to go to if someone were to decline to sign the easement and this process were to go the full legal process, how would that impact the timing for bid construction? Would that extend that process out, or would that run concurrently with?
I think it'll run. I think it'll run concurrently. We've done our estimates. A lot is dependent on when the appraisals come in, and that's what takes the time. But there's two parts of the litigation process. The first is the acquisition process, and then there's the claims process. The eminent domain procedure law is set up to allow that acquisition process to happen very quickly, in a matter of weeks. And that's how I intend to pursue it. The claims part, if someone disagrees with the compensation being offered them, can take some time after that, a year, 2 years. But we're going to get those pipes in the ground in the spring.
So the statute recognizes the importance of getting the project done with the understanding that compensation is a decision that
Yes.
time is not as much of the essence, in other words.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right, well, with that, we'll close the public hearing, and thank you, Mr. Trainer. Appreciate it. And we'll be anxious to hear of any progress that you might be able to make here in the next few weeks.
I'll take the board up.
Very good, thank you. All right, we have a third public hearing tonight, and if you could read the legal notice as it appeared in the Gazette.
Please take notice that the Town Board of the Town of Clifton Park will conduct a public hearing on the third day of December 2018 at 7:10 p.m. in the Wood Memorial Meeting Room in the Town Office Building, located at 1 Town Hall Plaza, Town of Clifton Park, County, Saratoga, State of New York, to consider the adoption of a local law of 2018, a local law amending Chapter 208 of the Town Code, the zoning code, to provide that two-family homes shall be considered as 2 units for the purposes of minimum land area requirements in the R1, CR, HR, and R3 zones, and copies were the proposed local law were available for review in the town clerk's office, and this was in the Daily Gazette on November 21st.
Very good, thank you, Pat. We'll open the public hearing. John, if you could describe what's in question this evening.
Yes, currently the 4 zones in front of us this evening are zones that allow duplexes through the process of a special use permit, which means that the use is allowed. However, the planning board has the opportunity to review the project and attach what's known as reasonable restrictions to mitigate any potential negative impacts to other permitted uses within these zones. It's important to note that R1 and R3 are primarily single-family homes. HR, not to be confused with HM, which is Hamlet mixed use. HR is Hamlet residential zone, is primarily residential in nature, and R3 is also residential in nature with primary uses, compatible uses being single-family homes. Looking at a recommendation that was received in April from the planning board had some concerns of various projects before it where duplexes were being reviewed under the special use permit requirements, and there were some inconsistencies with interpretations of the code that they felt that applicants and the public could be provided better guidance and direction in terms of the impacts of how to treat a lot to be used for a single-family home when it's being considered for 2 units and what would constitute a second dwelling unit. Our code does not, in its current definitions, make a distinction towards the base density calculations from single-family versus duplex, and that's one of the recommendations is to increase the bulk density requirements and classify a duplex as a 2-unit property containing 2 family units, so the density increases. So for example, in the R1 zone with water and sewer, you're required to have 20,000 square feet for a single family home. When a special use permit is applied for, which again the code outlines as the process by which the planning board can approve a duplex unit, it is silent and doesn't speak to any increase in the bulk density requirements. This would basically double that density requirement in each of the 4 zones where it's by special use permit. We're not making any changes to Hamlet residential, or I'm sorry, Hamlet mixed use, which per the Western Clifton Park GEIS addresses duplexes as a permitted use, not through the SUP process, but as of right, and already has a bulk density calculation. Also within the business districts, there's some density calculations that are provided for where duplexes are allowed as of right. And then our form-based code also allows duplexes as of right. It speaks to the bulk density requirements. So it would be limited to these 4 zones. Did get some feedback from the planning board who met last Tuesday evening. The one thing, and I know one of our planning board members is here this evening, and more than welcome if he wants to speak during the public hearing, but I'll try to summarize what some of their comments were. One of the concerns that they had is we often see a need for what's known as a quote in-law apartment or accessory apartment for family members. So the planning board would suggest a potential definition that may make a distinction between an in-law apartment for related family members under our definition for family, that provisions within the SUP requirements be made that may or may not increase the density requirements, but they felt that that's something that should be discussed as part of the public hearing process and see what the thoughts and desires are on that. In addition to that, Article VB of our town code, which would be Article 5B, because there's a 5A. I had to double check and make sure VB wasn't a Roman numeral, so I'm assuming it's 5B. There's a section 208-4315 that speaks to the density incentive requirements by which somebody can request additional density. And it speaks to single-family homes at $30,000 for the fee density and duplexes at $20,000. The code does not speak to if the duplex is a duplex defined as one structure, or is it 20,000 per unit? So again, that might be another area for potential clarification at the planning board. And I believe also a letter from Friends of Clifton Park Open Space highlighted in their recommendations, written recommendations.
So other than the clarifications, what did the planning board say?
That was the highlight of what they had to offer. They did want the board to look at it. The board has looked at it, so I'd say that this is...
Did they give a preference?
Towards the current language in the code?
No, as far as the change.
They did not.
Okay. But the chairman did. Did he or did he not?
I don't remember if he did at that meeting.
Okay. All right, very good. Any questions for John? Okay. All right, very good. All right, if we'll open the public hearing for public comment. If you'd like to speak on this matter, please raise your hand. We'll ask that you come forward, state your name and address for the record, and please keep it to 5 minutes or less. Anybody that would like to speak tonight? Yes. I see. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Is that okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Susan Burton. I'm actually here representing Friends of Clifton Park Open Space. I'm at 338 Riverview Road in Fisher Ferry. And as John mentioned, we have made comments to him as well, so I wanted to put those comments on the record, and I have a written statement to give you, Pat, and the other members of the board. But, recently members of Friends of Clifton Park Open Space have met with various officials about the town code governing duplexes and in-law apartments in the Conservation Residential, or CR zone. And we appreciate the opportunity to discuss this issue and to clarify our concerns about the town code pertaining to these building types at this public hearing. We wish to clarify our position in 3 major areas regarding the current space requirements and also the bulk standards, things such as size, shape, placement of buildings on the land, etc., for duplexes and in-law apartments in the CR zone and the town's associated open space incentive zoning. So, number 1, conservation zone impacts. With the notable exception of the Meadowview apartments, the character of the conservation residential zone has resulted in duplexes and 2-family homes primarily found in the hamlet zones. Our position is to restrict this housing type to the hamlet residential zone and to eliminate duplexes from the CR zone entirely. However, if the town board prefers that the concept of a 2-family dwelling unit should be allowed within the CR zone, the town should require minimum land areas that are consistent with 2 separate dwelling units. There is ample evidence from other municipalities around the country that 2-family residential units are not equivalent to single-family units in critical environmental and social issues such as traffic, water and sewer, land use, etc. Therefore, it is imperative that if the town intends to continue to allow duplexes and 2-family dwellings in the CR zone, this housing type be defined consistently with single-family residential units for space and bulk standards. For example, in the duplexes in the CR zone requires 6 acres, not 3 acres of unconstrained land. 2 is definitions. We strongly urge the town to continue to define duplexes as special use in the CR zone and specifically prohibit multifamily dwellings. In addition, we feel strongly that the special use permit provisions specifically prohibit the waiver of the duplex space and bulk standards by the planning board. This will ensure that the intent of the comprehensive plan to protect the rural character of the CR zone is protected. Furthermore, the town code should be further enhanced to clearly define single-family structures that are modified to include in-law residences as 2-family dwellings, regardless of the zoning district in which they are located. Such dwellings, which are frequently the result of a building conversion or addition, should be subject to the space and bulk standards in effect in the zone in which they are located. And 3, incentives. There is a companion issue to the bulk standard issue that should be addressed as part of the proposed changes. Currently, section 2.208-43.15, John referred to, special conditions, indicates that a duplex is characterized as 1 equivalent dwelling unit under the open space incentive provisions. This definition prescribes 2 acres of unconstrained land or $20,000 for each incremental duplex over the base bulk standards in the CR zone. This is inconsistent with the amenity required for a single-family resident in this zone, for example, 3 acres of unconstrained land or $30,000. We strongly urge the town board to rectify this inconsistency as part of this code revision process. A consistent incentive-based approach for land conservation will further advance the goals and objectives of the town's open space plan. In summary, we believe our recommendations enhance the combined regulatory and incentive-based approach envisioned in the original GEIS and CR zoning. We urge the town board to give serious consideration to these issues as changes to the zoning code in these changes to zoning codes in Weston Clifton Park are planned. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is a subject that's been discussed for some time, so appreciate your input. Anyone else? Yes, gentleman in the back. Come on down. How you doing? Good.
I'm Ryan McAvoy, 17 Hiawatha Drive.
Thank you.
I can't put it nearly as eloquently as the last speaker, but
give it a shot.
But I did just want to comment that this does help to clarify what seems to be a gray area in the code that people have discussed quite a bit lately. It seems appropriate in a positive direction for the town. This would help avoid unnecessary overpopulation, along with the corresponding traffic and infrastructure costs and concerns. This would also help protect property owners from unexpected types of developments in their neighborhoods. More dense projects, there is a place for that in the town, and I think the town's trying to define that. That should go through the intended channels and, processes that are in place and be approved by the town board as intended to prove their value to the town of Clifton Park, especially when considering whether or not the cost of infrastructure and quality of life are worth the higher density.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Yes. Come on down. How are we doing tonight?
Very well, thanks.
Good.
Ed Abley, I'm at 3 Woodland Drive, and also here representing myself through Abley Builders. I'd like to read a letter that I sent in a couple of weeks ago on November 19th, and then just offer a couple more comments on that. Today I became aware of a proposed amendment to the Town of Clifton Park zoning code that would, as currently drafted, eliminate a residential subdivision project of the Abley Limited Partnerships that has been pending before the Town of Clifton Park Planning Board for well over 2 years. This project, located off John McKenna Way, the Fourth Way, and Christina Marie Drive, would entail the construction of 14 duplexes on 14 lots within a proposed cluster subdivision with a homeowners association. The total size of the parcel is 20.74 acres. The project has been designed to limit impacts on adjacent residential subdivisions rather than connecting to those subdivisions. The project also entails the preservation of a substantial open space of plus or minus 11 acres. This open space is located so that it provides a buffer to the surrounding residential developments. The design of this project and many meetings of town staff, the town planning board, and the applicant represent a substantial past commitment of time and resources to the project. Indeed, after the planning board indicated their preference on the nature of the roadway, the project also required substantial consultation with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The town planner, on behalf of the town planning board, wrote a letter to the Corps confirming that the town wished to see public loop road for the project rather than a roadway owned by the HOA. Abley Limited Partnership also expended thousands of dollars on engineering for the project so that after the June meeting of the planning board and the complete submission could be made to the town planning board and the town staff for preliminary plat approval, as well as a special permit approval, special use permit approval. If the town board adopts the zoning change as proposed, all that effort may be jeopardized, and the zoning change will have an extreme negative impact on our project. Abley Limited Partnership respectfully requests that the town board amend the proposed zoning change to include the following language. This zoning amendment will not apply to any project with a pending application for subdivision and for special use permit approvals where such project has proposed to subdivide land and to build duplexes according to the current zoning requirements. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to comment on the proposed rezoning to identify the devastating effect it will have on our project and to propose the above amendment, which would allow us to continue planning board review of our pending application. So I just wanted to read that in the record and just make a couple of points about the special use permit as it relates to duplexes. It should probably be looked at when you listen to some of the comments. I think there's some merit to some of the points, but one of the things that we see as a longtime builder in the area is the popularity of this housing type. So when you restrict it, you may be restricting something that people want and desire.